Welcome to the studio. I don't know how much you can all see. There's not actually very much to see, but if I put my arms like this across here, then that is the width of the studio. Francis is busy. Here we are. There. Francis is busy mixing up. This is Francis here. Can we see you, Francis? Come in. I'm sure
I'll move in a bit. Right.
Move in a bit. Okay, great.
Oh.
Yeah, there's Francis, and he's just mixing up some slip for the first demonstration. So when that's ready, it should be all right now. We can fill up that, and then we can get started. I've got so first of all, I'm going to cast a chess piece, and I'm going to use. These are the molds I use. They're in two parts. There's the bottom of the mold, and then there's that part. That's where the slip gets poured in. Actually, it's not. That's the bottom. This is the top. These are upside down molds, so they go together. I'm only going to do the one for now. Great, thank you for doing this. Okay, we're going to need it. Oh, we can do the timing on that, can't we? Because when this is a jug full of liquid slip, when it gets poured in, I have to keep an eye on a clock which is in front of me to know how long the pieces are going to be cast for. I want to cast them for about 6 minutes because I like them to be, well, that's actually quite a short amount of time. I'm going to go now, pour. Oh, there we are, up to the top. And check the time. So it's about 3 minutes, isn't it? So if I stop at, we can empty the slip when it gets to 9 minutes. There we go. Put that out of the way. Okay, I've just got a lid to put on my bucket because things always get dropped into the bucket. That protects things. Okay. So I'm just going to put that to one side for a minute. While that has its time casting, I've got some mugs that I wanted to show you. So when things are ready to come out of molds, so that there's a mug in this mold. I've devised a special way of getting these out because I want to put my mark on the bottom. So we see that's all right. So I'm putting, this is a plaster, this is just a block of plaster. So put that in, turn it upside down. There we go. That's good. Okay. That's good to go down like that. Just check that it's flat on there. So I've got also this there. I use other stamps, but this is a stamp with my maker's mark on it, which is going to go on the bottom of the pot. Lovely. And I will put the date on it as well with a feather. 20, 21. So that's the, is that so right? Am I even holding it up?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Good.
Just that.
Just that. And then give it a quick wipe around, or this is called Fettling, just around the top of the cup. It isn't a mug yet. I'm going to put the handle on in a minute. Okay, that's nice. Good. Could you wrap that up for me?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Okay, now there is one I made earlier somewhere.
That's the timer.
6, the timing, yeah, so we're on to 9 minutes.
Okay.
Will be good. You can use this plastic on without taking off it. Everything has to be kept wrapped up with plastic because the consistency of the clay or the dryness of the clay has got to be monitored all the time, especially when I've got heaters on in here because it's really cold otherwise, or if it's in the summer, it's a real struggle to keep things wet. Handles, where are the handles? Okay, so I'm not going to show you pulling handles because it's a little bit messy for now, but I have pulled some handles already. They would come out looking like this. So I'd hold a lump of clay in my hand and with lots of water, I pull down the lump of clay and then I leave them just to go. I actually leave them flat to dry off a little bit. And then, oh no, we'll leave that one out. That's one handle that I will put on. So when I've got my handles, can we see, where's a good place to see this? I'm not sure if you can see that.
Yeah, you got it.
Right, tool. So I'm using just a metal kidney, a sharp edge, just to chop through the handle. And from there I can shape it and let it firm up a little bit more. Yeah, you can see that. Like that. Wrap that one up. Yeah, thanks. So then putting the handle on, I like to try and line it up with the mark on the bottom just so that we've got some consistency of how I'm doing things. So just use, this is just water. So just a little bit, not too much. Do with a towel. And then I've got the handle that I've cut already in shapes a bit. And just trying to check that it's straight. That's all I want. How are we doing time, Francis?
Yeah, time to do the chest pieces.
Okay, are you gonna empty them for me?
Yeah.
Brilliant. There's just the one mould.
But we can get maybe 2 pieces from that.
Oh yeah. We should get a. So Francis is just emptying that porcelain out of the mould.
Not sure.
Where do you want me to put the?
Yeah.
And a shake once it's stopped dripping. I can see that it's dripping a little bit. Francis is just to my to my right, letting the mould.
I'll give everyone a tour of the studio in a second.
Okay.
Put that on the side.
It's all going here. Probably should have put a handle on beforehand. Never mind.
Okay.
That's good. Oh, so this is putting the handle on. Good.
It's the chest piece, and the nursery is what we look out on. Then the small kiln and big kiln.
Okay, where are we up to now? We've drained that. Do you want to, Francis, take one of the chess pieces out of that mould there? That one's got a chess piece to come out of the mould, so maybe you could show people.
Great. All right.
Will that work, or is it easier if I do that?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Now's a good time to do that. You can get in front of me, it's fine. I think.
Oh, okay, this one.
No, it's that one. That's it.
Okay, so we can.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
see.
yeah, that's it.
Leave the lid. Carefully remove it from there.
Well done.
And
Lovely. You can just wrap that one up with the others. And then probably it would be a good time to, we can unwrap this pile. That's got some of the chess pieces that we've started carving in.
Ah.
And then you can get on with the rooks.
Okay.
I think I'm going to wrap that up and come back to it later, but that's basically putting a handle on. I will go back to it and smooth it off a bit more because I like to make things nice and smooth. But again, that will just be using water to do that. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to put that to one side, I think. Let's have can't really wrap that up there. We'll have to put it over there. Actually, I'll put it upside down. Maybe we can drape that a little bit better.
Sure. Okay. I've got it.
Right, our babies. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, could we have a picture of the finished mug that we discussed earlier, Richard, the blue one?
Sure thing.
And then I'll move on to chess pieces.
Can you see that there?
Yep, that's good. So yeah, that's all my handles. I pull them by hand, and it's an unusual way of working with slip cast material to actually. Oh, I've lost my thread now. It's unusual to work with slip cast to actually join a handle onto it. Normally you would cast the handle separately and then stick the cast handle on, but I do use the same body clay as the casting slip is made from, but it doesn't have the ingredients to make it flow when you mix it up, which is what we were doing earlier. We were mixing it to make the slip flow nicely. So that's an unusual way of working. It's probably quite a strange way of working for many people. Anyway, so that's a king that I cut out earlier. Does it go back to the big picture, Francis? No. Oh, yeah, it's me anyway. Then that's better. I can see what I'm doing from there. So that's what we're aiming for. And to get to that, where's that template gone? Can you pass me that template there of the King Francis? Yeah. Yeah. So what I do to get to this is I've got a template just cut out of paper. I do use Illustrator to do my design work, and then yes, you can see I don't know if you can see where I've marked it. and I've started cutting it. So that's where I started to mark it, cut it. Scalpel. I've been a surgeon, isn't it? Scalpel.
Can I have the flat tool?
Yes. Okay. This is where it might be useful to hold the camera so you can see what I'm doing.
I'm on it.
On it. Good. Very good. And then you'll be able to see the marks a little bit easier, I think. And yeah, there's another one that needs to come out. Well, let's do this one. And can you see? Yeah, you can see that. Okay, can't you? I'm just going to cut the pieces into two pieces rather than it just being one piece. So I'm going to cut the king at the top of his crown, and that will be another rook that Francis will carve for me. That's good. Okay. So there's the two pieces coming apart. So that one's for you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good for after this one.
All right. Now just to tidy this up a little bit, I've got my sponge on a stick, which is a great tool, and it just fits nicely in there. So a little bit of what's called fettling on the inside.
What does fettling do, Sarah?
Fettling just smooths the edges. If you can see, there's like rough chunks hanging off there. You see them? Great. That's all that the fettling does, really. And you can do it, you carry on fettling at most stages of the process, because the less defects you have as you go along, the less likely you are to get little nasty rough bits on the finished work. So I'm just picking a few bits off here.
Got a couple of questions that might be good to ask whilst you're doing this, actually.
Oh yeah, great.
Well, how long does it take you to transpose your designs from Illustrator onto the clay?
How long?
Yeah, what's the length of process from Illustrator to clay?
From Illustrator, well, I've got to, assuming I've got a finished drawing here, like that, that is a plain drawing. So the length of time it takes to print it out, to cut around it. Sometimes I use like a spiky tool. I haven't got a. I'll just show you this like that. So sometimes to actually transpose it, I go with this. It's a dentist tool, and I just mark just the points of each of the parts of the king, queen, or whatever, I mark it with a straight line. Have you got that tool that you use? Have you got that flat tool? And then once I've got the dots marked on it, I will go along with a flat tool with the dots and join them up just to mark it. It does bring me on to a point that I was going to talk about later, which is the necessity to keep the design really simple and easy to reproduce. So I wanted something that was made up of straight lines, so no curves for cutting, just because it makes it much simpler to cut with a straight edge rather than trying to cut curves, which would be, it's possible, you can do it, but it's a little more random and less reproducible. So the total time from Illustrator print from a printout to getting it to the stage that I showed you, where it was at probably 15-20 minutes, including excluding printing time, actually marking it all up. It does actually take quite a long time, which is why I did it beforehand. Yeah,
that's great.
Hopefully that answers that.
Well, if that doesn't, Caroline, just write it in the chat and I'll ask other questions. That kind of leads on to another question. That leads on to another question from KD. How long would it take to make a whole chess set? You might be coming to that later, but if not, I thought I'd ask. No,
I'll answer it now. We hadn't actually talked about that. Depends how hot. With the thing is, there's a lot of drying time and a lot of getting it at the right consistency. But I think if it was just one chess set, not the 4-player set, that took a long time to make the 4-player set. But with just 2 armies, I think we could do it in a week. Do you think? If at a push,
between 1 and 2,
at a push, working really hard. Well, no, yeah, making it without glazing it. I think a week. Working all day, every day, probably, pretty much. A week, and then glazing takes a long time, because you've got to make really sure that when you've glazed it, you have cleaned it all and prepared it properly, because this is a we've got two parts to the, that's not biscuit fired, is it? That's raw. That's unfired.
Let's get the other then. This is the 3 parts. So we have 3.
Matter.
There's the
to raw, make we've got biscuit fired. I think those ones up there are biscuit fired. So the first firing, once you've made it, so we've got a week to make it. Then the first firing, that's biscuit fired. Test it. Yeah, it's quite hard. And when it's biscuit fired, it allows the glaze to take really nicely to it. It absorbs it. It allows it not to just dissolve again. If I put it in glaze, which is water and the powdered glass, it would just disintegrate. So it has to have the first firing, then the second firing, it has to be glazed, but you have to be very careful, otherwise you get little misses like that you can see on there, and that is where the glaze wasn't quite smoothed off properly when I put it in the kiln, or there was some dust on it or something. So two or 3 weeks for a whole set properly, including all the firing, the kiln loading, the kiln unloading.
That's quite taking. I know you're taking us through the process and you're going to talk more about the chess pieces, but I guess this also comes in because you've taken us from a handle into carving chess pieces. It's quite different. What led you from going from, the work that we know you for to carving chess pieces and taking 2 to 3 weeks to make whole armies of them?
Yeah. I think it was originally, I've always had in the back of my mind, ever since I was about 17 and I met somebody who was making his own chess set, and I then met another artist who also told me, a much older artist, who told me that was a sort of lifetime's thing for an artist to make a chess set. And I thought, I'd like to make a chess set. I would. That was years ago. And then I met Francis, who's very, very proficient at chess, I would say. And that's that. And then with lockdown, that kind of sparked my interest in, well, it sparked the idea to make a chess set. And I said, finally, I was like, oh yeah, I wanted to do that. I'll do that. And I did it, and we did it all together.
Didn't we do the 4-player first, or was it? Was the originally alongside?
The first thing was the paper designs, and all the way through working as a potter, I suppose, I've always tried to find ways to transfer computer-generated images into clay. Throughout my degree was very much based on how to get images from the screen into the 3D form. So, lost my thread again. Where were we?
You were talking about why, really?
Why I started making a chess set, that's right. So that's why I started making a chess set this time round. Well, this is the first time I've made one. So for the challenge, and because it was lockdown, we had a lot of time on our hands. And it was also something that Francis was interested in as well. So it was something we could both do together. And we have been working together in the studio pretty much for all of lockdown, I would say.
Yeah, since maybe March or just after March last year.
That's right. And then you mentioned the 4-player set. That was another, just a massive challenge. Well, it's something to do with all this time.
I'm not sure if everyone would even know that 4-player chess existed. I definitely didn't before we took.
No,
so
it's like, go on, Richard.
No, I just said it seems quite confusing. You go on, please.
Okay, well, a 4-player set, you have 2 armies opposite, and then you have 2 armies at 90 degrees to that, and you all play into the middle. You probably better explain.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Great.
But yeah.
And I know what. Then the next thing really to talk about is the actual design of this set, which. What did we have to consider when making the set? It was the pieces. The pieces have got to be recognisable.
The size to begin with, yeah.
The size of the pieces was kind of determined by the cylinder moulds that I already had. And this is a medium cylinder. I've got a small one, which is the pawn. Have I got a pawn knocking about something?
A finished pawn.
That's a finished pawn, so it's a little bit smaller than the moulds. So that's the sort of size that the pawn would come up, in contrast with the king size. So that's a small cylinder, that's a medium cylinder. So in terms of size, though, that was a restriction, was the restriction of size.
We experimented with the large cylinder molds too.
We did try, that's quite right. We did try the large cylinder mold, which is too big really to fit on a chess square.
A championship board is what we were aiming for. Championship size pieces.
Yes, and they fit well on the championship size board, which is just as well, because the 4-player game ends up massive and it needs that space to get all the pieces on it. Just thread again. So that's. What was I talking about? I was talking about the photon, wasn't I? So the photon, the design of the actual set. Could we have an image, Richard, of the actual photon, that really colourful computer image of the photon?
Sure thing.
Because a lot of the development of the chess set, that's the one. Great. We were having a lot of conversations between us, not necessarily in the pottery, just about the kind of like really getting down philosophical conversations about the very essence of, or the beginning, the start of things. And it came, do you want to say something about that?
No, you're going fine.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I will interject in a moment. Yeah. The start of things, the photon, the beginning, that kind of philosophical discussion, right?
Yeah, about it kind of being the original source from wherever. And that was the image of the photon. And that is, we could go back to the camera now, Richard. So that was that was the design. Yeah, the cross on the top of the chest there. And as I've said before, I wanted
Maltese cross. Yeah.
Which is similar to a Maltese cross, yeah. I wanted all the pieces to then kind of fit together with that, and they all had to have straight edges, so they were easy to make. We've got the size. What else do we need to consider? That the chess pieces needed to look, and this was where Francis helped me very much. The pieces need to look like chess pieces, because some chess sets you see and you think, oh, what's that? Don't even know which piece that is. And you need to quickly know, if you're in the middle of a game, what piece you're moving. So that was important. What other considerations did we have to make? Just looking at notes I made.
How long did it take you to go through the designs? On Illustrator. It was Illustrator, wasn't it?
How long did it take me to make the designs?
Yeah. Go through the that process.
I don't know. How long did it take me to design them?
Maybe it was a few weeks, wasn't it?
I think a month or so, probably. Yeah. Because, and also you were helping me develop, say, the knight, for example.
Yeah.
I'd made one kind of a knight, just chopping away at one of those cylinders you saw earlier.
Quite a few iterations of that one.
Yeah. So there were a few iterations of that knight.
An older one over here too.
Let's have a look at that. That was one for the 4-player set, which I made with the smaller core. Have you got the picture of the Black Knight, Richard? In contrast to this one, which it's got bits of its tail missing because it's a bit of a misfire, but that's made from the pawn shape mold. It's much smaller. And then that's made from the bigger one. Again, it got simplified. And unfortunately, we haven't got the original knight that you made that inspired that one, which was a lovely horse. I think Francis's father's got that one now, and I think he's watching. But yeah, where am I? I keep losing my place. Right, that's the knight, the development of the knight. So that came from Francis made this lovely horse, but it was it was quite detailed, wasn't it? And it was very sculptural, and it was made with fingers. And I thought, well, that's lovely, but there's no way I'm going to be making a lot of those repeatedly, and I don't think you would want to do them like that either.
No,
repeated. So we simplified it, but it gave me the shape that Francis had in his head.
And we streamlined the process now, so we'd be pretty quick now to do maybe a week, between 1 and 2 weeks turnover. Yeah,
probably at a push. At a push. So yeah, that's. I think it was really there was a lot of conversation, which inspired and sort of drove that creation of it. And I think really, in the context of Drive to Create, the exhibition, that conversation was very important. And I mean, we're lucky because we weren't as isolated as some people that you will hear from later. I think Nora hasn't been able to do, and I think she will talk about that. Hasn't had that interaction, which really helps the creativity. Do you want to say something else about the lockdown and creativity?
Only that it was a relief to be doing something creative, and that's ties in with what Drive to Create is about how to be creative, like what is creativity, also the freedom it gives you to do something, and just to focus on something is such a relief to be engaged in the process of making something.
Yeah, but then that conversation, it kind of feels like has really been restricted over lockdown for some people. It has been to some extent for us as well, but less so, I'd say.
Yeah.
Because we've been working together. Where are we up to? Working through lockdown. So then we get on. We did just carry on working through lockdown. Francis was very much helping me in the studio, and really you've learnt the process, I would say, from start to finish, haven't you?
Yeah.
Sieving, glazing, kiln loading, all of it, and making the chess pieces. It's really good. And you said about that.
How long have you been doing it, Sarah? You've been doing it for?
How long have I been doing it? Well, I've been making pots for over 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. 15, 20, 25, 30. Yeah. No. I don't know. I lost count.
Standing on the shoulders of giants here.
That's right.
Yes.
Do you want to, Richard, can we see the mug, Francis's mug? Because he's really done an incredible job of learning. The mug that you can show, he pulled the handles. He did everything. He cast it, fettled it, put the handle on, painted it.
Which colour one is that, sorry?
It is, let's have a look. It is Francis Cup. Francis Cups.
I didn't realise you had those. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, those handles are pretty superb, really. Because I watched you quite closely doing it and gave you a few tips along the way. But that is all your own work.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
I might have glazed it for you. You might have glazed it. I can't remember.
Oh, I took that photo. I remember now.
Yeah. No, good work. So then, yeah.
And Francis features in the exhibition with some of his other designs on T-shirts, doesn't he?
Yeah.
With another question actually around that: will there be a T-shirt with a porcelain chess piece on? That would be a.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Would that be?
I think it should be. We need to do this. It's
a really good idea. Who gave us that idea?
Let's release that in time for the.
Very good.
For the exhibition, yeah.
You could do. You actually could do that. So I guess moving onwards again, the knock-on effect for all this, from my creativity, having done the chess piece, having worked with the photons, had the conversations, was to take that back into more of what I do with the cups and the mugs. And I was also working with another designer to develop some pieces for her. And she was using these, where's my stamps gone? She was using these little stamps. Oh, can I see that? Can you see that? Yeah, good. So those are the sort of stamps that I used. So I did this photon design of the stamp. Maybe you've got the finished porcelain one there, Richard. Or the orange photon espresso would do, just to show how that went back into making mugs. Yeah, that's it. And then it also carried on, because I had all these colours for this other lady who wanted some work. I've now got loads and loads of coloured glazes, which are lovely, and I thought, oh, maybe some rainbow. I can start working with rainbow colours. Have we got a picture? There we are. Lovely. So those are the absolute latest out of the kiln. Those little, they're double espresso mugs. So they are quite small, but lovely to work with colour. And that also, that relates back into the photon and light and the splitting up of light.
So it really sounds like you came into lockdown with one particular style and one particular way of approaching, and the hopes to make a chess set and the hopes one day to do these things. And then through the process, you've achieved many chess sets now, or at least a dozen. It seems.
Yeah, you've got a few.
Yeah, we've got a few in the gallery. And you've gone from what has sort of been your signature colorways into exploring whole new sort of color spectrums and color, ways of playing.
I mean, I have made rainbow things before. I do like color. So it's that again, it's a sort of going back to what I did. I think there's a lot of backwards and forwards over time as
cyclical nature.
A cyclical nature. Very good, yes. It is. And things do develop in this way. And yeah, lockdown has been interesting because it's really pushed my creativity on, for sure. I've done things that I wouldn't have done otherwise. I certainly wouldn't have tried the chess pieces. And I probably wouldn't have worked with the stamps either, actually. But that came again, that commission came through lockdown. And it just happens that was the timing of it. So I've been busy doing that for someone else as well. So yeah, I think that's how it all fits together. We could probably, for the creativity, that's questions. Yeah, we could do questions.
A couple of questions, if you'd like them. So the first one that came through was, do you also make the board, from Mike? As in the chessboard.
Do you want to answer that, Francis, or?
Sure. Well, we've been making a four-player board, haven't we? So we've completed one of those, and that is, I think it's on show, but it's folded up around the sides. But yeah, we do make boards, or have made some cardboard boards.
That one's made out of cardboard.
Yeah.
So so far as making, I don't know if you were thinking, do I make a porcelain board? I haven't done that. And although I have made, actually thinking about it, I have done a tiled surround for somebody who wanted a tiled surround for their cooker. And that was all done with tiles. So it's doable, but it makes it very heavy and not so practical. And also again, from a practical point of view, when you're got my fired porcelain here, if you will call the pawn the square, if that was a tiled square, then you'd have to be happy about porcelain on porcelain as a sound when you're playing, which is why we went for the cardboard, I think. I mean, what I would love to see is the wood. I know that Shane did a lovely table that he decided not to put in the exhibition, but something like that a wooden board, I think, would be much more preferable. So to work again with another artist would be really useful and really productive, and I think it would be a nice effect.
Brilliant, thank you. So I'm going to skip straight to another Mike question, then come back to a KD question. But Mike's second question is, do you make your own plaster molds?
No, I have done, and it wasn't a very pleasant experience, really. It's very messy. It doesn't mix well with clay. So I prefer to get someone who's good at doing what they do to do it for me. But yes, I have done it, and it's hard. It's hard. I can think of better things to do with my time, honestly.
Well, there's an answer. So KD's last question is actually sort of quite a final question. So if anyone else has any questions that you'd like to ask, please put them in the chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. But KD's last question is, will you be doing another exhibition after lockdown?
Oh, yes. I haven't got one planned as yet, but I will.
You're always welcome back here.
Oh, thank you. That'd be great.
So it doesn't look like anyone else has got any other questions. Unless you do, please shout now if you do, or raise your hand or type something. Otherwise, it's a case of sort of wrapping up, if that's all right with you, Sarah, unless you had anything.
That's fine. That's been great.
I mean, I guess you sort of touched lightly on the thing that flagged with me is you mentioned a proton.
Yes.
I don't know if I'm entirely sure still what a proton is. I don't know if that's just me.
The photon.
Photon.
So it's I think the way my physics teacher explained it to me is that it's a cross between a wave and a particle of light, and we're talking quantum physics really. So in my head, it's the very first sort of bit of consciousness that has exploded. Oh no, it hasn't. That's not really the right way to say it, is it?
Almost.
If consciousness has got energy, it would be a photon. So it's energy transferring into matter.
The smallest
and
component.
It's going backwards and forwards and kind of vibrating. And
it's also quite a miracle to see that image that we saw in the slideshow. You know, that's quite a miracle how they achieved that image through a very intricate experiment done with lasers to split the light. I think, although we're beyond explaining that, though, but it's incredible how they got that image of what does a photon look like, and that can be we can.
Well, it's kind of combined into the what's this? Like when you have two what do you call them, tetrahedrons, two triangle tetrahedrons, yeah, two square base tetrahedrons interacting to make a sort of star form. Then you've got the movement and the light. Sorry, this is a terrible explanation of it. It's sort of perfectly clear in my head, but I'm not that good at articulating it.
It's a great explanation for what you've made and sort of why. It kind of works as a really nice almost analogy for what's sort of taken you through everything. The energy and the color and everything else and the passion throughout the past year is explained through the photon and the interest in that, and you're sort of jumping off from that into your new creation. So I think it does work, and I'm glad I came back to it.
Yeah, nice question.
But I haven't. I'll retain it. I mean, I feel a bit better that it's quantum physics and I haven't retained that information. But no, I think that's a great explanation. So unless anyone else has any other questions, I will do a little wrap up in which I'll say thank you very much for taking the time to take us through your process and an overview of the last year and your chess pieces, and actually show us a bit of how you do it. It's wonderful. I really want to feel the porcelain in that raw form. It looks so satisfying to cut. And I'll say that later today at 1:30, Rosemary, who's on the call now, we've got a talk with Rosemary Jones, followed by Shane Jones, who Sarah mentioned is the woodworking master, at 2:30. And then at 4, we have Nora Young, who you can see one of her pieces just behind me in the gallery now. Is a fantastic painter. So apart from that, it's just a really big thank you to Sarah and Francis for taking the time to take us through their process.
Welcome. You're welcome. And I'm really looking forward to the other artists